Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Two Doors podcast. I am blessed to be here with Gregor Pacnik today. And Gregor is a seasoned technology leader with expertise spanning software engineering, innovation, strategic planning, agile lean methodologies, DevOps, and product-led growth. He is comfortable in over 27 programming languages, and in some of them even more than in English. His career is defined by hands-on involvement in leveraging these practices to gain invaluable customer insights, develop MVP prototypes, and successfully bring new propositions to the market. He delivered this in a wide variety of environments, from corporate fintech to hedge funds, all the way to prop tech startups. Gregor, welcome to the show.
It's brilliant to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. So for everyone listening, Gregor and I have known each other for a good few years now, haven't we?
It's getting on to a decade.
And this is a man that brings me a lot of joy. He's like one of the funniest men I know. And so just hearing about that, maybe you can share with everyone listening or the audience about the 27 languages, because that fascinates me.
Oh, yeah, okay. That's a bit of a joke on our side, because you can't be an engineer, like a proper engineer these days, without touching so many different technologies and effectively languages. Yeah. You don't have to be an expert in every language, but you need to know how to operate on it. And as it happens, there's about 3 or 4 different categories of them. Your procedural, your functional, your set-based, and a couple of other exotic ones. So once you're comfortable in those basic principles and all the languages, it doesn't really matter which way. They go Java, C#, much the sameness here. Python, PHP, bit of JavaScript, roughly in there. Yeah? So comfortable in language, yes. Expert, probably not.
And is there like patterns then? Do you start to see patterns and that's the way you learn?
Yeah. Look, speaking in a sort of limited scope of business SaaS applications, ignoring robotics, mechatronics, all the stuff that's up in space, because that's completely different dynamic to what you do. But most of the time, you're dealing with 2 simple things: backend data and how to present that to the user. Even if it's an AI thing, even if you're running massive models behind the scenes, you can still consider it as a service that you pump in data and get out data. And on the front end, the flow, the state of the UI or whatever. Funny enough, that applies for APIs as well, but you're a lot more limited in APIs because you don't control both sides of the equation, so you need to be a bit more careful. But there is nothing more complex than that, unless you really go into ETLs, data processing, things like that. But that is a subset of engineering. So I don't know, 10, 20 patterns. It's got you covered for vast majority of things.
Wow. We had a friend was on the show from AWS the other week, and he was sharing that there was these 4 computer scientists that came together, and they talk about patterns that's like a basis to learn from. But it just sounds a bit too complex for me. I mean, you sound like you've harnessed some of these.
Oh, look, it's actually very simple to understand. Probably remember when you were learning how to drive a car, how everything was extremely overwhelming. Yeah, seat, steering wheel, both rear view mirrors. Manual, automatic. Let's say gearbox. There is so much you need to do when you're not used to a particular environment, and over time, what your brain does, it gets used to the patterns of driving. Yeah, you stick to one side of the road. You indicate before you change lanes. You do the head check. So you need to practice similar to martial arts, katas, simple moves constantly for them to become, just a part of you. And that's where really patterns are for. They are not a holy grail of architecture. You do this or you fail. It's about that's the way to potentially achieve something. You take it, you practice it, and you apply it where it actually makes a difference. So they are not scary. We do patterns every day, all the time.
It's very true, isn't it? There's many things, even the way that we see the world, it all works in patterns. And tell us what you've been up to work-wise lately as well. And because obviously you've always been in the innovation space as well. And so, yeah, tell us a bit about what you've been working on.
Yeah, it's last year was extremely rewarding. That's another word for saying challenging. And in this time and space, yeah, always been on the innovation, even in corporate fintech, always tried to push the boundaries. But I got my opportunity to work in a technical startup, Analytics, just under 5 years ago, where we started with a product journey. There was a bit of an idea, a bit of a MVP, a bit of a product market fit, with a fair bit of legacy on the code base thrown together. But had to make these head of tails out of it, and actually a product that we could sell. So there's a journey we've been on for the last 5 years, and in the last year in particular, identified consulting is not really, there. Business was slowing down in that space, so we pivoted to a very product-led approach. First time I was actually so heavily involved with a product approach on a technical solution, and it was eye-opening. It's probably the last few years were the most defining in my career, as in how I approach things and how I understand things. There's a fair few things I would say to my younger self back in the days. Not all of them for on air, but I really started to appreciate understanding of the overall context of where technology sits in the company. Either if that's technology first company, let's say like PropTech Analytics, or as a department in a big enterprise, things like that. Technology's got a role, but it's not there to just exist and be a cost center. It's there to provide value. And that value is really the key thing that you need to discuss constantly.
It's definitely from a business perspective, isn't it? They're always like, what's the value? And what have been some of the lessons then?
I like the lessons. I was always of belief to not just focus on features. A lot of businesses, lowercase b, no offense there. A lot of people not versed in technologies see technical product as just a bunch of features. Yeah, can you click on this button? Does it print this? Can you click on this button? Does this image appear? That doesn't really matter. It's just a bunch of features. But there is this whole understream of what I call aspects that need to be there for those features to work. Let's say an example of an aspect: authentication and authorization. Can you log in, and can the app make sure that only you are doing things? When things go wrong, can engineers see what went wrong so they can fix it? When you're on the other side of the world, does the page load? Very, very simple things, yeah? All the way down to, can engineers deploy things to production? Because it doesn't matter if you got the latest and greatest features. When you have a bug, and if you can't fix that soon and fast enough, no one cares about the features because they can't use it. Yeah. So all those are aspects. And I was always on a firm belief, and, from experience and got burned here and there, and, the usual story, that you need to have that constant stream of working on aspects always there. So always keep on improving DevOps, CI/CD, deployments, authentication, authorization, logging, making sure you can deploy. Every time you touch it, you improve it a little bit, because that got that compounding impact, yeah, like 1% improvements and so on. That when things go super busy, which they did go super busy for us, all the groundwork is there. Yeah, you can pause it for a couple of months and really focus on some important things. Let's say pivoting the whole platform from sales approach, where, I don't know, a person needs to hear about a potential need of the user or customer, manually compile a quote, send out the quote via the custom email, wait for the quote to be accepted or prod that it's not accepted. Once the quote is accepted, come in, set up something in the system, you get the drift, yeah? All the way down to a person logging in and just executing all that as the end user in the platform. I know every platform does it these days, but Analytics didn't have that ability. Yeah, so the last year was really about a transition, and that transition requires changing a fair few parts of the system. People think that just because you're a young company, or you're working on a new product, there is no legacy. The moment you write a line of code, it's legacy. The moment you set up a system, it's something you need to maintain, unless no one cares. In which case, why you're setting up in the first place? So, regardless of how old or young the product is, you will always have to do that maintenance and look after it. And then when you're doing changes, you're always refactoring. You're always throwing something old away, replacing with something new in a sensible way. But that is only possible if you can afford to iterate fast, learn fast, be honest about what you're doing, not just deployments, but also the value to the user, measure, get the feedback on it, and execute on it.
And it's actually doing it, isn't it? You're not talking theory. You've like, that's what I could sense then. It's like you're going through, you're finding product fit, market fit, who's the user, why they're using it. Because you had a huge set of data, didn't you, that you were working on, of like advising neighborhoods of how to use data, what to do. I can imagine there was just times where you could be banging your head against the wall, or even there were moments where you're like, oh my God, this is amazing, because you're making impact. And that's the journey, isn't it? I think that some people, maybe that they've been in more of a corporate for many, many years, they don't really understand that expert. But you've actually been in corporate, haven't you? But you were in the innovation arm.
Not always directly in innovation, always pushing towards innovation, but yes, ended up in innovation. So insurance, Australian insurance, fintech, doesn't get much more regulated. Probably medical is a bit more regulated, but there is a lot of rules in there, what you can do, what you can't do. And at the same time, employs a fair few people. And whenever you have a group of people, even if you just do, there is inefficiencies. There are inefficiencies in the process, in the communication, in structuring, talking to the business, deploying. There is always an opportunity for an improvement. I mean, Toyota showed us that, yeah? Their Kaizen approach. From where they came from to where they ended up.
Can you dig more into that?
Yeah. Well, that was another learning from last few years. The Kaizen approach, where the Kanban and all other things come from. Or agile with capital A. That's a big thing. You put agile in business, everything happens. No, nothing happens. The principle behind Kaizen and agile, as I understand it, is not to deliver super fast, high quality. It's to deliver what matters the most and to optimize the system where it's hurting you the most. Sometimes that's features. Sometimes that's deployment. Sometimes that's logging. Sometimes that's talking to users and customers. Sometimes it's a completely non-technically related thing where tech still needs to be part of the conversation. Let's say on the legal side, can we do this? What do we need to do? This framework, that framework. So I was, for many years, I thought, being an engineer is like a feature machine, just spit them out, zero bugs, quality, just zack, 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 zack. And I imagine the Japanese chefs are just slicing that. And sure, product managers, business wants features because that's their unit, their currency, that's something they used to operate on. But back to my aspects, that stuff needs to be there as well. So what's the point of building the best feature if you, can't deploy it? Or might take 6 months to deploy it. Or it might take a week to deploy it. But if that week to deploy it is today, we're a couple of days away from Christmas, aren't we? And your feature is needed a week before Christmas, it doesn't matter how great the feature is if you can't get it in front of the user. So optimizing, systems thinking approach, all those things. Optimizing for what's hurting the business or the technical arm of the business the most at the time. Sometimes a bit of foresight, but it's not always buttons, images, user flows.
And it's also using judgment as well. Like there was a startup I helped many years ago, and lovely lady who ran it, but she listened to one of the tickets that asked for a feature and didn't. So here's a bit of wisdom for people listening, is that if you're running a startup and someone's advised for a new feature, go and ask the other clients if they would use that feature, because what happened for the next 2 months is that the team went off and built this feature and then it was never used. And that was 2 months away. That's distraction. You lose focus, you lose momentum. And yeah, I think that you have to know what the objective is, but maybe keep renewing the objective.
Not just focus and momentum, lose morale and trust. So they're the two things that, engineers are not engineers because they don't want to build things. They want to build things. So there is very few engineers out there that I met personally that don't want to build things. So there is never
True.
lack of need of building. Yeah, that's why in that field. But if they're building something, I mean, it's the same for you. Yeah, you're building something and no one uses it, and then you throw it away. maybe it could be a form of meditation, but that's on your own time, But when you're at work, you want that stuff to be used. Yeah, that's a big thing. A couple of years ago, been a couple of years ago, I read this brilliant book, completely from left field, which technically is almost like just a long blog post, The Mum Test. Have you heard of it?
Yes, you've told me about this.
Did I? Okay, so I caught you.
But tell everyone else about this.
So the Mum Test is got a very simple premise. Usually, when interviewing users is the actual end user of the application, not the person that's potentially paying. So that might be a customer, someone else. But when interviewing users and about what they want, it's the usual thing. They're trying to please you with what you're asking. Imagine being at home, and that's where the premise of the book is. Son asks mom, "Hey mom, I've got this brilliant idea for startup. I'm going to build this digital cookbook thing." And mom's got no how to say no. Sure, yeah. Would you use it? Sure. The conversation starts there. I'm not going to spoil it for you. It's in the first 2 pages. But the book teaches, or the premise teaches, to interview end users about features without asking them about features. So asking about what their pain points are, how often they are, what's the impact on something working or not working. In a sense that this book is the first part of that jobs to be done framework. So you can consider it as an interview part of the jobs to be done framework. And not that you need to follow jobs to be done, but the Mum Test was probably one of the few extremely influential things in my understanding of how to go about product. It's not the person that's yelling the loudest. It's not the person that you spoke to the most recently. And more importantly, have you heard about XY problem?
No.
Yeah, okay. Another interesting learning a couple of years ago again. When a person, doesn't have to be business or your application related, when a person's got a problem, problem X, they don't know how to solve it. That's why it's a problem. But they think of a couple of ways they could solve it. And they find the most probable one, which is solution Y. But they still don't know how to do that. And then they go, okay, I've got a couple of clever people around me. I'm going to go and ask them to help me with the problem. But they don't ask for X, they ask for Y, because they've already done the pre-thinking. Like exporting a spreadsheet. They go, okay, what do I do with spreadsheet? I need to get it to this person. Oh, I heard about some CSV business. So can I export this to CSV? So instead of asking, I want to export this spreadsheet because I need to do blah, 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 they go, oh, can you help me exporting this to CSV? Sounds innocent, but if the premise of the problem is a bit masked, then building a CSV export might be completely against what the business or product really needs, because it was about getting the original spreadsheet somewhere. I know it's a banal example, but understanding that there is a bit of depth behind what people are asking for, and to interrogate that. Why? What are you trying to achieve? Who's the target audience? When? How often? All those things. Because who needs an export to CSV feature if it's going to be used once a year?
Oh.
That could be a manual thing. 50 times a day to 500 end users, or 10,000 emails? That's a completely different story.
Yeah.
Again, it's not a button. So understanding all those things when people ask for them is crucially important. And that's where Mum Test comes in. Mum Test paired with XY problem. It's a brilliant way to uncover a lot of value.
And it sounds it's about clarity as well, clarifying, what you're trying to achieve, where you're going, what you're doing. And I would love for people listening, Gregor, to have the privilege of you sharing any of your overcomings. Like, obviously you've been in this industry, many, many moons now, but is there any wisdom you'd impart or anything, you want to share?
There's a lot to share.
Yeah.
Don't even know where to start. I'm going to skip over all the production issues, defects, fixing, and hero stuff because, that's scary. It's great once you fix it, but let's not go there. The biggest wisdom, and that was a huge learning for me over my career, was understanding how to navigate conversation about the iron triangle: speed, quality, and money. And that's your
speed, quality, money.
And they want it fast and quality. They want it fast and cheap. It's three dimensions. Pick two. That's where a lot of conversation was, and that's why, because the conversation was there, my mind naturally went there. Speed. Oh, we got a deadline. We can't have bugs, but we need to have, it needs to be cheap. We can't hire 50 other people. I mean, show me a business that doesn't have those three constraints. Seriously, even when you're loaded with money, why would you be throwing money away? You always want to have as much as practically possible for as cheap as practically possible with $0. I mean, which one would you pick? I mean, again, ignore putting satellites into space. They've got completely different things to worry about. And turning that conversation about that triangle and looking at triangle forward on and just pushing it so it falls flat on the table. Yeah. And then from that triangle, just draw a line straight up perpendicular to it and name that line value. And that's a conversation you should be having. So do we want it yesterday? What value does it bring? What happens if we don't have it yesterday? Okay. We are talking cost of delay. Yeah. Can we have a fraction of it and it starts to deliver value? Or does it need to be the whole thing? Yeah. Sometimes people ask for the whole thing because they used or burned that if they didn't ask for a bloody submarine along with everything they wanted, they will get nothing. But if you have trust, sometimes you can't have those conversations without trust, which is something you need to be working on all the time. But if you have trust and say, oh, yeah, I understand you want, big Christmas tree with everything. What about if you just start just with the trunk or just with the top? Because in IT, you can do that. It doesn't have to be built from ground up. Does that start delivering value? Because the moment you start doing that, you can start getting feedback. You can start seeing if it's being used. Instead of spending, like you said, 2 months to build something, can you have something out in 5 days, 10 days, 3 days, half an hour? Just if users find it useful, they will use it. They will tell you if they don't like something. And that's a great learning tool. I mean, and that's why Agile, Lean, all those frameworks teach with principles. But it does come down to the value. Why does someone part with a resource that's valuable to them? Either that being money in terms of business, or time, volunteering, or using a platform, or their personal data in case of freemiums and other free services. I'm not going to name any of them here. You're parting with something that's valuable to you. You might not value it highly, but it's valuable to you in return of using a platform, a system, a product. Why do people do that? Only because they get something in return. Doesn't have to be financially. Might solve their problem, might bring them joy, might help them communicate better, might help them stay in touch. There is too many dimensions in there to really, really pin it down all the time. But no one's going to use a product, and it doesn't have to be a technical product, unless it brings them value or help or save time or something. So the sooner you can get to that confirmation, oh, this feature, yes, great. Start being picked up by X number of users, and they're extremely upset that it's not perfect. That's the best signal you can have. Yeah, okay, maybe don't do that when you're building medical devices, yeah? Medical devices, satellites, out of this conversation because they're completely different dynamic and things like that. I'm talking, business applications, SaaS, things like that, where, well, it's not going to end if something doesn't work perfectly. And yes, we've done that in insurance. We've done one of the greatest people I work with, Stuart Woodridge, picked up and led that pre-innovation thing at the insurance company. We worked together, where life insurance, you get a policy and it's with you for life. No one is allowed to change a single letter in that contract until you either cancel that or it expires at the end. Yeah. So you would think, oh, that is a place that is extremely hard to innovate. You can't keep on changing the product. But yes, it can be done. We've done it in a couple of months. Tried new product, it worked. There are ways around it, even if the regulation and whatever environment you're in might feel restraining and constraining and not letting you. Yes, you can innovate. Might take a bit more effort in prepping, but yeah, there is definitely innovation and experimentation possible on all kinds of levels. I think I talked myself into a corner there.
That's
Help me,
brilliant.
Alex.
No, I think that's a great place to leave it, Gregor. I think the the triangle you talk of there, and there's a lot of wisdom. So yeah, thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been a pleasure and great to see you.
Absolute pleasure on this side as well. Thanks for having me.